Good evening, guys. I want to talk to you a little bit about composting in Florida. Florida is a unique climate. It presents a lot of unique challenges, mostly being the sand. Now, something you got to understand about soil composition is generally speaking, soil is made up of minerals, and they're divided not by different kinds of minerals, but rather by different size minerals. So you've got sand being the biggest particles in your strata, and then silt, which is about 1/10 the size of sand, and then clay, which is about 1/10 the size of silt, or 1/100th. Now, Florida's sand, or 90% of it, is just sand. That's all there is. And that means that you're going to have a lot of trouble holding on to nutrients because the granules are also large. The water is going to flow through it very quickly, and it's going to take all those tiny microbes and tiny pieces of organic matter with it. So you can throw mulch on the ground, and very quickly, within 6 or 8 months, a year if you're lucky, you're just going to have sand again, because it will decompose. Unless you've put like a foot on it, it'll decompose and it'll be gone. So composting in Florida is very important because you need ways to continually find more usable organic matter. So I've got my compost pile here. I built this a couple weeks ago, and I was using just a single pile method and just turning it. But with a 2-pile, it's a lot easier because I can just turn it into the other pile. So I want to show you this. This is compost. It's about 4 or 5 weeks old. I transferred it from an old pile. And this is 90% probably grass clippings and another 10% kitchen waste. So I don't know if it shows on camera, but there's actual steam coming off of this. If you get that lens close, it'll probably fog up the lens. So it's not done yet because you've still got big chunks in here. But I'd say another 3-4 weeks, it'll be done. Once it cools off, once it stops heating up every time you turn it. And the reason it heats up is because you've got microbes and such and bacteria in there, and as they eat, just like any other creature, they generate heat. And that heat gets trapped and continues to break it down. So if your compost pile is cold, you need to do a couple things to modify it. Okay? You need to add water, because these microbes live in moisture. They live in water. So if you don't have enough water, they're not going to be able to survive and move. So if you've got little pockets of water inside it, they might live in that a little bit, but they're not going to be able to travel around and multiply. And 2, you need to add more green matter, because the natural bacteria and the yeast that are found in nature aren't going to be so much on the brown material, they're going to be on the green. So the other thing, you've got to give it air. These are living organisms that live inside this compost, and giving it air is what keeps it alive. If you don't have air, all the aerobic bacteria is going to die. Now, anaerobic bacteria is under water. It's in places where it can't get oxygen. And it will definitely break down organic matter into smaller pieces that plants can digest, but it's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to stink, because as anaerobic bacteria lives, it, instead of producing heat, it produces methane and other volatile organic compounds, VOCs. That's why a swamp stinks, because all that stuff, all those leaves from the trees underneath the water that's sitting at the base of the trees is decomposing. It's just taking its sweet time, and it's generating methane and VOCs. So it will work, but you're going to have a much more rapid decomposition with aerobic bacteria. So I'm going to turn this real quick, and then in a minute I want to show you my swamp tea, or also known as a weed tea, and it's my other source of quick nutrients. This is my swamp tea, weed tea. It's basically liquefied plants. So you got some weeds in your garden, you got extra grass clippings, extra plant trimmings, old rotten tomatoes that you're not going to eat. You can compost them in the regular way in a compost pile, or you can put them in a bucket of water and submerge them. And this gives the anaerobic bacteria the opportunity to break it down a little more fully than a compost pile and aerobic pile would do. This is liquefied plants, so fertilizer essentially is just plants that have decomposed. This gives the opportunity to break it down as fully as it can be. Now it might take 6 months to really break it down well, but once it does, it's going to stay in that stable state, because decomposition essentially is breaking it down, trying to break it down to its most basic stable state. That's what this is. And because it's in that most basic state, a plant can access it and benefit from it far more quickly. So it's a quick fertilizer. So you take some of this and dilute it. You got to dilute it because it's really hot stuff. But cut it maybe, I usually do about 25% weed tea to 75% water or so, and then put it on your plants. Now it can still stink. So if you've got lettuce greens, kale, things like that you're going to go and eat the leaves pretty quickly, you don't want to do this within, say, a week or so of wanting to eat it, because you might taste like a swamp. It's not going to taste good. But putting it on tomatoes, turnips, carrots, basically any other plant, it's going to find the nutrients that it wants and benefit from it far more quickly. This is another really good method because in Florida's sandy soil, you've got to keep things onto the sand pretty regularly. This is the newest addition to our micro homestead here. I had quail for about 1.5 years, and I found that when you took the quail droppings from underneath the coop and mixed it in with compost, it sped up that decomposition process much faster. And it actually makes perfect sense because there's so much bacteria in their droppings that it's going to kickstart that process. Now chickens, this is the next iteration, the next learning opportunity here. I've heard it's more beneficial because you can take your kitchen scraps, put it in here, and they kickstart decomposing your kitchen scraps, even just tearing it apart and scratching in it. And then you take their droppings and mix it into your compost. Now I've also heard it's pretty hot. So hot even that you're going to want to let it sit and cool down for 6 months to 1 year, some people say. Now I'm still experimenting with this. So if you've got experience using bird droppings, basically of any kind, in composting, let me know, because this is something that's new to my yard. But even if we don't get much benefit from it, it's a great learning opportunity for the kids, and hoping it works. Yeah, I'm still learning how to end these things, so bear with me. But my whole goal is to keep this kind of raw and unfiltered. If I say something that is patently false, or if the neighbor drives by on a dirt bike, I might pause or take another cut, but I'm just having fun with this. Thanks. If you got any comments, let me know.